Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to dive into malware protection. My name is Mark Palmer. I'm one of the email security specialists over at Bytes, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Andrew Williams from Mimecast and Simon Crocker of Palo Alto. To give you guys some more context, and no doubt both Andrew and Simon will do this more justice than myself, but the ability to leverage bilateral sharing of information between best-of-breed solutions to stay ahead of the ever-evolving threat landscape, as well as understanding how network and email security can work together seamlessly to ensure full protection against unknown threats, is something that we are seeing more and more of within the market and within our customer base. Now, before we begin, I just wanted to take you through some housekeeping. For those of you that have not joined a Bytes webinar before, you will be muted throughout the presentations. But if you do have any questions and you would like to submit them, you will see on the right-hand side there is a questions box. Please pop the questions in there, and we will cover these during the Q&A at the end. We do have a fair few attendees with us today, so rest assured that should we not get to your questions this morning, we're not ignoring you, and we will follow up with the relevant answers. The session is fully recorded and will be shared with you once we're finished, so feel free to pass this on to any colleagues that maybe couldn't join today and that you may feel would benefit from reviewing the session. And as always, if we could ask you to please take the time at the end to complete the feedback forms, as we want to ensure that these webinars that we host are relevant for our customers and that we are maximising the precious time that we get to spend with you. Here is a rough agenda of what we're going to see today over the next 30 to 40 minutes. I'm going to cover a very high level overview of Bytes, but we won't spend too long on that, as the main thing that we want to see today is how leveraging Mimecast and Palo Alto to ensure a secure network is the best way to go forward. So at that point, I'll hand over to Andrew to go through some slides, and then on to Simon. And I'll jump back on the end to run through the Q&A, or we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. So I can see a lot of existing customers on today's webinar, so thank you for joining us again. While most of you on the call will know Bytes, I wanted to give you a flavour of who we are and to pull away from the common misconception that Bytes are a one-stop Microsoft house. In fact, Bytes are a hugely scalable partner in terms of the different types of technology that we work with. Microsoft is absolutely our bread and butter and a key example, but we also leverage the likes of AWS and the wider data center team, but we also have this hugely credible security practice. And what this does allow us to do is enable effective and cost-efficient technology sourcing, adoption, deployment, security, and management of software, hardware, and cloud security services. Within the Bytes security practice, we have around 65 people that cover a whole breadth of solutions from best-of-breed technologies in the security market. Having this hugely experienced security practice should give you an idea of the various areas of security that we can cover, and should also reaffirm your confidence in the vast array of offerings that we can cover within the different business units at Bytes. Having this asset to our customers' disposal, on top of the aspects that we touched on the previous slides, we also have a security arm right the way through to first, second, and third line support on a number of key technology areas that we work with our customers. And having these teams that are working with our customers, coupled with licensing specialists, technical, pre and post sales resource, all on top of the 160 or so account managers that we have servicing our customers' day-to-day needs, should give you a flavour of the pedigree that we have within the market. And that brings us to where the likes of Mimecast and Palo Alto and their wide portfolios complement customers' cloud journeys beyond, and to bring together a more robust solution. So on that note, I'll pass over to Andrew. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk to you all today in terms of the ability to have our integrations and what it means. I'm just going to start a screen share on my side, just so we can get a little bit of information. You can see specifically what we're going to be talking about, and Simon and I are going to be leveraging the power of each of our platforms and what specialities our different companies bring to the party in terms of securing your environment. Now, I want to set a little bit of context in terms of being able to layer up and ensure we've got an understanding of what it means with a breach. And there's been some really interesting bits of information flying around recently in terms of organizations that have had to pay for a breach because of maybe there would have been some ransomware let into the company, or maybe it was something that someone had got on and clicked on with a USB stick. You know, these types of things we don't necessarily always get the answer to. But an interesting one that probably is very relevant over the past 2 to 3 weeks in terms of more of US-based customers is that Colonial Pipeline. And we saw that they spent, I think it was $4.4 million just trying to get back from the event that took place, which is in essence, they made the decision to turn the entire pipeline off because they had suffered a breach and they weren't sure to what depth it had got into their organization and into specifically their control systems. And that's a very interesting discussion for any more of the sort of manufacturing customers that are on the call, because we know that while the perfect world of a true air gap between the control systems and your day-to-day IT operations is great, sometimes there's often a lot of interconnectivity between the two of them because there needs to be a mechanism and control for you to understand what's going on, get reporting and so on, which can result in the type of situation that we saw with the Colonial Pipeline, where they had to take off their pipeline that stops the flowing of oil, and then we had the whole of the eastern seaboard not being able to get any fuel. And that's where I want to specifically pick on that value of 3.28 million, because what's really interesting about that is often, you know, prior to joining cybersecurity, I used to look at these values and say, well, that's just a really big number. That doesn't really mean a whole bunch to me. But if we look at that recent one, you know, the important piece is how much did they actually pay? What was the respective data loss that they're going to suffer as part of that? So how many different systems did they need to rebuild from scratch? Then there's all the remediation time in terms of the actual IT staff that have to bring everything back online, coupled with the other people within the organization. You have to wind back and get them to an even keel to ensure that they're actually able to function and move forward. And these are often the values that get fallen by the wayside, because everyone looks at that large 3.82 million and go, well, it's never going to happen to me. It might be £500,000 and no more. But it really could get to a very large number very quickly. And you know, just think of GDPR coming into the equation in terms of data loss and what the potential fine could be for that. It's quite an interesting piece of information and a statistic which is a lot more relevant than we think. And one of the challenges around that is specifically why email is being used as a mechanism to get into an organization. And I was having a chat with one of the analysts last week about zero trust and where email fits into that equation. And what they say is, it's a very important point, is when it comes to getting into an organization, we've got multi-factor authentication, we've got the VPN technologies, there's all of the different single sign-ons, there's a consolidated ability to understand what devices are coming from where. There's all the mechanisms and policies in place to do that. But if we really want to bypass all of that, we just send an email. Because email has so much inherent trust built into it, particularly if you're utilizing some form of a cloud service which is known to the world. And this is where the important piece in terms of email coming in as a delivery mechanism for some form of malware coming into the organization. With so many emails sent back and forth, are we really able to interrogate those emails to the greatest level of detail? Sometimes not, sometimes yes. But in essence, we've got challenges because some of the different ways that you can send malicious content into an organization is, well, we can attach it straight to the email. We can encrypt it as part of some form of an attachment with a password. We can do fileless malware. We can make them click on URLs. There's so many different options that are available. And if the technology is not able to detect all of them, you land up with a scenario of you've really got a very wide open door in order to allow things into the organization, because we need to have email in order to communicate with our customers, with our partners, with our supply chain. It's just such a primary tool, and everyone keeps on talking about email's dead, we're not going to see any further growth, and it's just getting worse and worse because there's so many more emails that have come into play, particularly with the work from home environment that we've got. While we have seen the rise in collaboration tools, means that there's different ways that we're communicating for those more ad hoc conversations, but we now need to formally send more and more emails to be able to communicate with larger teams, to communicate with the supply chain, with our partners in terms of cleaning offices and making sure that if there has been some form of a COVID event, for example, that they're able to come in and clean the offices. Now, those large numbers translate to, well, what are we doing in terms of the services that we're utilizing? And this is where cloud services come into the equation. And what we were talking about a little bit a moment or two ago in terms of zero trust, that's meaning, well, if it's coming from a legitimate cloud service, it's got some form of an authenticated SPF record, it's verifying its DKIM record, and DMARC is not going to fail. And then bang, you straight in. TLS will be in place, and all the good stuff means that we're only relying on the content embedded within the message to determine if it's something malicious or not. And with Office 365 being the #1 target based on the amount of users utilizing the service, means that we've got a big problem, because people can test out all of the different security mechanisms that sit within Office 365 very easily, because you can sign up for free, you can turn on ATP, check to see what's taking place. That's what works to get past those layers of security. So therefore, we go in and look at third-party services to augment that and provide another lock for the attackers to unpick. And in this day and age, it becomes such a relevant piece of information, because there's just so many different instances that are targeted towards the cloud collaboration tools, and particularly email. But then we look on the other side, and this is the real interesting statistic that comes with it, is people often focus on, well, I've only got one inbox sitting with it in my environment, and I don't have to worry about it. But how many different mailboxes is your mail account attached on in some form of a distribution list, some form of a shared mailbox, anything like that, which might provide the capability to deliver some form of malware into the organization? And it's a real challenge, because people often focus on the one-to-one mappings of the individual user account, therefore must protect them, or maybe I must only focus on my executives because those are the ones that are typically targeted. But just think of a simple case of someone low down within the admin department. If they have access to something specifically powerful within a control system, they can potentially take down an entire environment. If we look back to, I think it was around about 2017, there was a smelting plant based in Northern Europe that a small piece of malware was sent through to that end user's desktop, and he had access to the control systems. And that basically took the smelting plant offline, because it wasn't controlled in terms of the protections that were not adequately delivered to him as well as the executives, because they felt that the executives were way more accountable in terms of what they had access to than that general admin person. And that's where you get some challenges in thinking around having to view email as that entry point very easily into my organization, as well as being able to try and protect everyone equally, and then providing all the layers of protection to ensure that the different styles of malicious items that are coming into the organization are being protected against, and you have a way to stop that and ensure that your organization is being protected. And I want to hand over to Simon here just to talk us through an example that they saw on their side when it comes to email.
Yeah, good morning everyone, and thank you, Andrew, for that introduction around the email. Yeah, email, as I think everyone will know, is the primary #1 attack vector that we see today out in the marketplace. You know, the thing is that you know, the adversaries are actually playing towards the weakest link, which is the human factor, and I think Andrew's already touched on that. So this is an example of something that we saw just in one customer around an email attack. Now, there are a couple of things around email attacks that maybe not that well understood. Firstly, there's the speed of the proliferation of an email, how it gets around inside an organization. And then there's also the polymorphic side of attacks as well, where the attackers, the adversaries, can just make minor changes to make sure that a single attack can be changed and reused time and time again. So this example is of an actual customer whereby an email went through to a targeted individual, and then it was actually replicated and proliferated around their organization. So within 5 minutes of that attack getting through, they had 864 instances of that email just getting around inside that organization. 15 minutes it had almost doubled, and then within 30 minutes, you know, you got 5,500 instances. So the time in which, you know, some of these attacks can actually just get across your organization is really, really scary. The attacker only really needs to get through once. You know, this is the same with any attack fundamentally. You know, when you're trying to defend, you have to be successful 100% of the time, whereas the adversaries, they only have to get through once. And as you can see with this example, once they get through once, they've got a landing point within your organization, and then it's really trying to make the lateral movement and proliferation within your organization. So really dangerous attack. But this was detected using our Wildfire, which we'll come into in a little bit more detail. And that's our threat intelligence and sandboxing capabilities that we have within the cloud. And we'll go into how bringing ourselves, Palo Alto Networks and Mimecast together, we actually really tighten up the security around this primary attack vector into your organizations. Andrew, would you like to?
Yeah,
so
I think.
Yeah, go on. Off you go.
Sorry, I just wanted to add in there, and that's particularly having the additional feeds from partners. I think is a very valuable piece of protection, as Simon mentioned, and often it's not looked at because we see these tools in isolation, and the value of joining them together and the ability to have that enhanced layers of detection, I think, is a really, really powerful thing that not a lot of people leverage enough in this day and age.
So when you look at better together, you may be thinking to yourself, well, Mimecast, they've got great technology around email and email security. Palo Alto Networks, they've got great security, but how do they actually work together? We're going to come on to that in a little while. But fundamentally, Mimecast have got a comprehensive integrated solution around cyber attacks into email systems, which is fantastic, and they are market leading in that area. Where the Palo Alto Networks comes into play to complement Mimecast and bring in that better value together is really we're bringing intelligence from a wider infrastructure. So we're not just looking at that one attack vector for intelligence. We are looking from intelligence that we will pick up from, whether it be the network, it could be the endpoint, it could be cloud, it could be anywhere. So we're looking for those hashes, we're looking for those attacks, the malware that we've seen elsewhere. We also have a really good global reach of our customers across the globe, enterprise, public sector, government. We've got them all across the globe from different industries as well. So what we're doing is bringing together all of that really good richness of threat intelligence that we are learning from all of our customers, being a market leader within network security, and bringing that into Mimecast and giving them additional triangulation on some of this malware that we're seeing that is coming through onto the email attack vector. Because fundamentally, as quickly as we can find malware, identify it, and then hand that over to your good selves via Mimecast, the quicker that you can block these attacks, and you basically get the advantage of that intelligence that has been learned from other customers, other organizations across the globe. So it's just really trying to speed up and removing patient zero from yourself, basically. That's the idea.
But I just want to I just want to jump on the back of what Simon was saying there, and that's the value that we can leverage, because it's back to that 99% problem. We see so many different tools out there saying I can detect 99% of all of the threats out there, but it's which 99% can you detect? And by being able to leverage Palo Alto's Wildfire technology to be able to see in terms of what they've seen from a threat and map that back to what Mimecast has seen coming in by email, and reciprocally the other way. So where Mimecast has seen threats, we have the ability to share that back into Palo Alto as well, for them to be able to add that into their endpoints of detection and ensure that the customers who are utilizing the Palo Alto technologies are ensured that they are being protected. So it's quite an important piece, and it starts expanding onto the very important thing around that sort of common threat intelligence, around leveraging what you've got internally from a perspective of things that are, or threats rather, that have been sent directly to you are way more value then using something that is beyond your borders and you're using maybe a free paid for, a free capability in terms of sorry, I've just got something popping up my screen here that I just want to get rid of. I'm not sure, Simon, can you just confirm? Yeah, you can see that. Let me just try and get rid of that. Apologies, this is just popped in and it needs to just go away. There we go, and we're back. So being able to leverage that common threat intelligence in terms of the styles of attacks that have gone into your organization, and then using the technology sets that you've got around that to find the information associated with that threat to then go and provide the protection against that, I think is incredibly valuable, instead of utilizing some form of a free feed, which is only leveraging beyond the borders and may not necessarily even be relevant to your particular technology vertical. And that's really what sort of power we have between us. Do you have anything to add there, Simon?
Yeah, so Andrew, just to add to that, you know, as an organization, we have tens of thousands of customers across the globe, and we've always been a great advocate of sharing threat intelligence. We will share it with all of our partners, Mimecast being one of our primary partners here in sharing that threat intelligence. So we're getting huge amounts of threat intelligence in live, you know, in live that we can share. We've also, you know, share on the Cyber Threat Alliance, which we set up years ago. I think it was about 2015, something like that. So we actually share threat intelligence with the general industry as well, but we have a live feed going into Mimecast via APIs. You know, it's always the latest and greatest live data around our threat feeds as well.
And that's the really important piece, and that last point there is reducing the time, which I know you mentioned right at the start of this, because you want to be able to reduce the infection point and how quickly it can spread across the organization. Sure. Let's jump into what this looks like. And for any of the Mimecast customers on the call, this is in effect what an email goes through. So it comes in, and we've got our threat labs, which are constantly looking for new styles of threats. We do rely on third-party feeds and detections to come back in as well. And then anything that our customers are seeing, very similar to Wildfire, which Simon will expand upon a lot in terms of feeding into our core detection stack, which means that we're rejecting a fairly high percentage of the emails very early on. We then move into the more enhanced filtering, which is trying to weed out, you know, all of the sort of, let's call them low and slow style of attacks. So your spam and very basic level bits of malware, so that gets rejected. But in the advanced detection stack, that's where the capabilities come in to look for malicious URLs, any form of malware that's included in the email, impersonation styles of attacks, etc. So as an email comes in, and in particular, we're going to be focusing on the malware area. So that runs through our malware detection stacks, and that includes a number of AV checks on internal sandboxing and file analysis and so on. If we've determined that to be malicious, we will send it through to Wildfire, and we'll talk you through what that workflow looks like. And if it's clean, we will then deliver it through to the end user. From there, where we've seen it as being clean, we will send it through to Wildfire as well. So if there's any common customers who've got both Wildfire and Mimecast, they can set this integration up, and you can have that all-important second opinion, as we call it. There's nothing better than having someone double-checking your homework. You know, how many of us would love to have had that person sitting on our shoulder when we're writing exams going, no, hold on, you might have missed that. You may want to change that answer slightly because there's something that you hadn't necessarily seen. And that's the value of what we do, is bring in these different integrations and being able to get someone to verify that. And when we get into the next piece of this, is actually what takes place, is the email gets sent through to Wildfire. Wildfire says, if I've known it, it's not a problem, I'm going to drop it. I'm very aware of the threats because it's come in via one of the tens of thousands of other sources and customers that you've got. But then importantly, should it be something that's that Wildfire hasn't seen, they can run through the analysis of this and determine if it's a verdict that is bad, and therefore we can go in and start to analyze that file with a bit more details, feedback to the customer, and then ultimately invoke some form of remediation. Because there's nothing worse than saying, I know it's bad, and then you let a customer know. But if we can tell them that it's bad and start to invoke the remediation, it's really powerful, and means we can go back to that. If you think of the example of the one that Simon talked us through, with 5:15, I think it was 30 minutes, how quickly that can spread. So if you've got the ability to remediate in a very short space of time, then we can keep the number of instances of infected endpoints down to a really low level. And if it's still seen as clean, so Mimecast has seen it as clean, Wildfire determines that there's nothing bad about it, no further actions are being undertaken. Simon, is there anything you want to add to in terms of once Wildfire has analyzed it, and what else it can do with the malicious information that you found?
So one of the things that Wildfire will actually do, will also give your SOC, your analysts a full debrief report on anything malicious that we find. So you will get a verdict. So you'll actually get a verdict report on benign or malicious. If something is malicious, it will also give you a debrief on everything around that. So it will give you a mini report on what that malicious malware was, where it was found, what was the profile of it, what was it attacking, any information that would be useful to any of the SOC analysts around, just trying to trace that down. Because there may be some remediation that they want to actually go and do. They may want to go and do a check and on the hash and just see if it's actually sitting or residing on any of the endpoints anywhere else in the network. So it will actually give you all of that intel as well. So it will give you a full report, which is very handy.
Let's jump into what type of information. I think, Simon, you can much better than I can talk through all of these capabilities and what Wildfire can actually do.
Okay, so Wildfire from Palo Alto Networks is actually a cloud delivered service. We chose to make it a cloud delivered service many years ago. And basically what it will do, it will take feeds from network, endpoint, cloud, partner ecosystems, for example, Mimecast, and it will basically allow for files to be passed up to the Wildfire Threat Intelligence Cloud, in which point we will then explode those and analyze what behavior that file or that script or whatever it may be, what we expect from that. So first of all, we have static analysis, where you just look at the content of the file. Is there something around that that is deemed malicious? Have we seen that profile before? Have we seen anything in there? Have we seen the hash before? Malicious, benign? We always want a verdict. It's either malicious or benign. We don't like, we're not sure. So we always have to have a verdict on that. Then we go to dynamic analysis. So all of these capabilities are basically passed through in seconds within Wildfire. So the dynamic analysis will spin up different environments, and in parallel will explode the executable, for example, against various versions of Windows, Mac OS, Linux, etc. And it will actually see what happens. Is anything malicious happening that we are uncomfortable with? And if there is, then we will basically then do further analysis. We've got machine learning. We've got things like within the Wildfire Intelligence Cloud, we have a custom hypervisor. So it's nothing that you would find out in the open market, because what we find is a lot of the malware has detection mechanisms in it to have a look. Is this what type of hypervisor do you have? It even looks at things like, is there any mouse movement? Is there any user interaction with the host? So we have to do loads of things within this custom hypervisor and dynamic environment to make sure that we can spoof any of this malware into doing what it was intended to do, even some of the time-sensitive one. We do unpacking, we do network traffic profiling, we do a whole load of different things in there. Once we've done our analysis, we will then generate that report that I was saying that it is there. So if it was malware, we can then identify the malware, the URLs that were associated with that, DNS that was maybe associated with that. DNS is another typical attack vector as well, and there's a lot of dynamic DNS going on today, and also the command and control. So you can get all of that information. All of that information will tie back fundamentally back to an email. You know, this could all be embedded somewhere within the email, within the text, within a photo, within a URL. you know, they are pretty devious on how they actually embed this. And then the updates will then get propagated across the globe. So everybody that's subscribing to Wildfire, and if you're subscribing to Wildfire and you've got the API key linked into Mimecast as well, then you will get updates within seconds, and this goes on a global basis. And this just basically really helps everybody to prevent that patient zero, and also the proliferation of that malware across your estate and our customer base. So, you know, going back to something that Andrew was saying, like right on early there, it's really there to complement what Mimecast has learned. You can never, well, you can, you should never have really too much threat intel or quality threat intel. Maybe that's where I need to qualify it a little bit more. You can have too much threat intelligence. What you want is quality threat intelligence that has had the rigorous analysis that you trust, and therefore you can then pivot on. Once you triangulate that, the complementary threat intelligence that you're getting from Wildfire with Mimecast will allow you to really tighten up that 1%, that 1% that potentially could get through. So just to give you some stats on that, Andrew, would you just skip on forward? Yeah, so just to give you some idea on the sort of the scale that we're looking at here, you know, I think that's a really relatively conservative number. You know, we get feeds from over 280,000 next-gen firewalls embedded into networks in many customers, tens of thousands of customers around the globe. In different environments, different verticals. So some of those verticals could be relevant to you because obviously there are targeted attacks as well towards different industries, sectors. So we've got a good coverage there. And also endpoints as well, 5 million plus endpoints, again, a conservative number. And then SaaS applications as well. We learn a lot from our cloud security as well, so whether or not they be SaaS applications, IaaS applications, you know, anything, we will be learning around that as well. And then we're also learning from our partners as well, so it's not just a one-way street. We also learn from Mimecast as well. So some of the things that Mimecast may be the first to see and the first to block, they will actually feed back to us as well. So it's a reciprocal agreement. You know, at the end of the day, the better that the threat intel is, the better chance we all have of stopping the bad guys, the adversaries that are out there, because they are very devious and they are utilizing all of the tools that all of the enterprise is using. They're using cloud, they're using machine learning, AI. They are, if it's available, they are using that, and they're using it at our peril, basically. So we have to be very agile, very nimble, and be able to react very quickly. So that gives you a little flavor around Wildfire and fundamentally why Palo Alto Networks, Mimecast, if you bring them together, they are better together. They just add that extra little bit of richness around that threat intelligence. So maybe back to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I just really wanted to add on the back of that, and Simon raised such a good point there in terms of the sort of two-way street and sharing of information. And when chatting to our threat intelligence teams, we typically tend to see things a few hours before others, which makes it incredibly valuable in terms of being able to share that intelligence with the Palo Alto's environments. But reciprocally, where we haven't seen those attacks because they've been targeted towards cloud or endpoint or firewalls, being able to receive that information back just makes it such an amazing integration, and just providing the sort of levels of comfort, and then being able to leverage those extra pieces of threat intelligence that you wouldn't ordinarily have from both environments. So just a bit of reiteration around that, and really powerful when we have our crowdsourcing in terms of the intelligence and being able to share insight from both organizations.
Yeah. And if you are a joint Mimecast Palo Alto Networks customer and you have these technologies, then look, it's just a case of really hooking in the API key from Wildfire into Mimecast, and you can leverage this. It's there for you now, so you know, please use it. If you haven't already done so, you've got nothing to lose. It's a great advantage.
While not a great advertisement for beer, Simon, we had an event in the US about 2-3 weeks ago, and it was IPAs and APIs, just to give you an idea of sort of the flavor. And one of the guys turned around and said, I'm on my 3rd beer and I've configured my Wildfire integration. It was so simple, so easy to set up. Now, I don't want to advocate that he went and did this without change control and approvals, but point being is it was an incredibly simple process to do. It's all undertaken through our administrative console, and you're just performing a couple of steps on Wildfire and you're up and away.
Yeah, agreed.
I think this is the end of the presentation in terms of what Simon and I wanted to share with you, but we wanted to open up the space in terms of Q&A and afford you the opportunity to ask any questions in terms of the integrations, any questions about the different technology stacks. And I'm going to stop sharing now, and you can see our faces, and we can answer anything that you submit in the chat boxes. Well, while we wait for some questions to come in, just Simon, I know from the channel, we often get a lot of questions with everyone saying, when it comes to these integrations, why can't I just use one versus the other? I can then just use native email security that I get with whatever my collaboration tool is, and I'll just leverage Wildfire. I think we've covered a bit of this, but you know, if you see customers asking those questions, any advice to them?
Yeah, I mean, you can have the approach of you know, a serial flow of inspection. So you do some inspection in isolation through one tool, through email, through the network, through the endpoint, and you hope that one of them will catch the adversary. That is an approach, and that's quite a common approach. Or you can take the approach where you have systems that are integrated together and they actually share that threat intelligence and they work together in a uniform way, so that they are gradually tightening up that security posture and really tightening up the attack vector. So you know, fundamentally, the network is learning from the email system's learning from what it finds on the network, and that has got to be a far tighter environment and a tougher environment for the adversary to get past. Because if they can go through one system, pick a way through it, and then they go to the next one, find a way through it, that's easier for them to penetrate a network than it is for a network that is constantly learning and constantly evolving around its threat intelligence. They're going to start struggling around that, because lessons learned at the first hurdle will get passed down the line, and vice versa. So that would be my advice on that.
I suppose it's just building on that layers of security. You know, we always think about layers of security within an organization, but it can expand beyond the borders of that to be the layered security within your broader ecosystem and platforms that you're in, yeah, which basically ensures that you're being further protected. Something I know a lot of customers ask us in particular when it comes to these integrations is, what type of licensing do they need to ensure that this integration will work correctly? Simon, I just want to hand over to you in terms of the Wildfire licensing. Is there anything specific that's needed in order to set this up? Is it just part of the stock standard Wildfire licensing piece, or do you need to buy anything extra?
It's a part of the standard Wildfire licensing. So Wildfire can be deployed in various technologies. It can be deployed on our next generation firewall, and you can choose which devices you want it on. You don't have to have it on them all. It depends on the use case. If you've deployed it on any devices, then you can then take the API key that has been defined for you as the client, and then you can take that API key and then you can integrate it in with the Mimecast solution. So as long as you bought into Wildfire at some point, then you can then reuse that API key.
And from our side, that's perfect. And from our side, any customer who's got our targeted threat protection capabilities, that means that you can leverage the Wildfire integration, because you merely just need the attachment protection pieces, which scans for malware to send through to Wildfire. There is an additional add-on if you'd like to have the automatic remediation. So that is an enhancement that customers would need to purchase, and that's as part of our internal email protection service. And that means that when you set up the integration, there's one of the steps. Would you like to create or invoke rather an automatic remediation event, which means that the minute that Wildfire has let you know that a potentially malicious file has been missed, and Wildfire sends you the analysis that comes with that, you can invoke a remediation event from the Mimecast platform, and it'll go off and do the work automatically, or you can go and undertake that manually. So there's options available, but if you would like to have any form of remediation, you need to have our internal email protection service on top of your targeted threat protection. So that's just a bit of insight in terms of if you just want to see the insight from Wildfire, you don't need anything extra. If you'd like to have the remediation, there is an extra add-on for us. We've mentioned already. Sorry, carry on, Simon.
Carry on. You're going to say something?
I just wanted to say easy.
Yeah, so I guess I've just realized there was a little bit of Wildfire that I didn't actually cover, and that is where are the files submitted? So, you know, we upload files to the cloud using Wildfire, but where is that cloud? You actually, as a customer, have choices around this. So Wildfire, you can submit to North America if you so wish. We also have a pop in EMEA, so over in Europe, or if you want your files never to leave the shores of the UK, we also have a UK Wildfire as well. So you can actually specify where those files get submitted to. So from that side of things, that's what you can do. Any files that get uploaded, they are only analyzed very briefly within the sandboxing environment. We will then take some metadata out of that for the reporting, and then that file is then destroyed. Okay, so it never resides, it's never stored. It's just some metadata that is kept and for your reporting basis, and then that's it. There is also one other thing. So remember, I said, you know, we never like it's either malicious or benign. We'd never like to have a verdict that is, well, it might be all right. That's just unacceptable. We do also have a method of checking a verdict as well. So for example, if you as a customer submit something and you have a hunch that it's been miscategorized as malicious or benign, you can actually question that verdict, and that will be investigated by an analyst within a short period of time. There's an SLA around this. I can't actually remember the exact time frame, but it's very quick, and that will be done locally in Europe. They will actually take that file, they will then do a full analysis again, and they will change the verdict if necessary. So that is a very, very rare occasion, but occasionally, once in a blue moon, a file needs to be reevaluated. So just to give you that, there is also human intervention if need be.
That's very interesting, and glad to know that there's, you can back it up beyond just the machines. You know, that it's always good to have if I can call them an overlord to make sure that nothing got missed.
Well, we've all seen the film Terminator, so when the machines take over, that would be bad. So. Yes,
there's a whole that's a different AI conversation all by itself. I don't see any more questions that have come in that need to be answered. Mark, can I bring you back into the conversation just so we can start to close things off?
So actually, it's Michael here. Not sure you can hear me. We've lost Mark to some technical issues. We're not quite sure what's happened there, but we've had two other questions come in. I think you've covered one off around needing both Mimecast and Palo. for this. The other question we have is there any instructions on how to do that, to do API, as we use Palo, Firewall, and Mimecast? So do we have this set of instructions? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a full community article on Mimecast sites. So if you search for Mimecast Wildfire integration, we'll provide you with a step-by-step pieces of what you need to do. And it's all easily wizard-driven. There's no need to get into any consoles or terminals. And we'll walk you through that process. It takes less than 5 minutes to set it up.
Great, and I'll be sure to include that in an email to our attendees afterwards. With that, I don't think we have anything else. So I just want to say thank you, first of all, to all of our attendees for joining us. So sorry, we have had a question come in. Have you found that the API limits or queries reached? I'm not 100% sure.
So there is one piece. So when you set up the Wildfire integration, there is a limit that sets for submissions to Wildfire itself. And if you're bumping into limits, and it's noted in the article, you just phone the Palo Alto support and say, please, could you increase my limit so that you could have more submissions to Wildfire. So it's not anything technical, and it's not anything that incurs additional charging, but it's just something that was set as part of the original setup. So there was a form of rate limiting in place.
Yeah, there was a little bit of rate limiting to basically make sure that we had some flow control and we didn't get DOSed or anything like that. So yeah, there was an enforced limit, but again, yeah, as Andrew quite readily points out, it is adjustable, and if you were to run into the API limit, which is pretty high, then that can be adjusted.
Just to put in perspective and add to what Simon said, we've had one customer run into that limit who set up this integration, and there's close on about, I think, 200 or 300 customers that are utilizing the Wildfire and Mimecast integration already.
Great, so I think that then certainly covers off all of the questions that we've had today. If there are any more questions, please do send them to tellmemore@bytes.co.uk and we'll get those answered for you. But with that, thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time to join us this morning. We've enjoyed presenting to you, and thank you very much to Simon and Andrew for presenting. I'm sure everybody's found this very, very valuable. As a last note, just a reminder that there is a feedback form at the end of the session. If you wouldn't mind filling that out for us, it certainly will help. Thanks everybody, and we'll end there.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.